Metal Gear Rising is a game that many people, including me, didn't even know existed until they saw the goliath of memes this game produced. But the question that everyone, or at least I, am asking is the game worth the memes? What is Metal Gear Rising? Said no one who hasn't been living under a rock for the past 6 months. But if you don't know, or you want to know more about the history of this game, here you go. Metal Gear Rising, or Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, as it's officially called, released on February 19th, 2013 for PS3 and Xbox 360, and January 9th, 2014 on PC. The PC port could be better, but I'll talk more about that in that section of the video. Originally, Kojima Productions was making this game under the alias Metal Gear Solid Rising, which originally took place between Metal Gear Solid 2 and 4. However, the idea was quickly scrapped because they were having trouble competently implementing the swordplay with the game. Eventually, they sent the idea over to Platinum Games, the people who also made Bayonetta and Nier Automata, to change the timeline to make the game take place after Metal Gear Solid 4 and make the game we know and love today. Believe it or not, the story is one of my favorite parts of this game. All the political tensions and conflicts that are created from Raiden and his enemies' morals really make the game more introspective than it first appears. Sure, there are moments of cringe and cheesiness, but it also has seemingly thought-provoking ideas. Metal Gear Rising is more in your face about the politics of it than the other games in the series, and this series is known for its politics. Even though the game is political, it doesn't become preachy. It's generally anti-war, but the whole Metal Gear saga is. It also talks about cultural differences and the profitability of war. It's a game with deep insight, masked in cheesiness, and if anything, it stops it from being preachy if it would have been to begin with, which I don't think is the case. The bosses all have insight into why they do what they do, and it's mirrored by the way they fight in their respective battles, but I'll get more into that in the gameplay portion. Sundowner is a war-hungry child at heart. Samuel is an honorable killer to an extent, and Senator Armstrong is a hypocritical politician. Where have I heard that before? All of their ideologies are fundamentally flawed, and Ryan's might be as well, but I think he's, at the very least, arguably the lesser of two evils, if he is an evil to begin with, which I would argue is not the case. And one of the things I especially like about the story is how in the Colorado mission, which is mission 3, towards the end, Sam shows that the people Raiden was fighting against didn't truly have a fair choice. This causes Raiden to basically have a psychotic break and revert to his war-hungry Jack persona. At the end of the game, he isn't truly that person, but I would argue that there's more of Jack than at the beginning of the game. But truly, he learns how to balance out his personas. The enemies use memes, and I'm using the term to mean ideas that are passed on through means other than genetic ones, to get their distorted message across. And at the end, they kind of win. They don't get everything they want, but neither does Raiden. In fact, as Courtney puts it,
an imperfect solution for an imperfect world.
I also like the Coda conversations. They add detail about the internal affairs of the various factions, sometimes give you hints, and even talk about cultural cuisine, my personal favorite of the topics. Now, even though I enjoy the story a fair bit, most people don't enjoy this game as much as they do for the story, but the gameplay is great, hell, I'd even say perfect, but I do wish they made the parrying tutorial a bit more obvious. I tried to do it in the tutorial when it told you how to parry, but I just killed them without it, so I didn't really know how to do it until I saw a YouTube video on what to do for the Blade Wolf fight. But that's at least partially my fault, so I won't count it against them as much as I would have otherwise. I also didn't know you could upgrade your weapon until the last level as well, but I think that's more the game's fault, although it probably didn't cause me to die the times that I did, because the times I died it was not really close. I personally find the QTEs to get out of a stunned state a bit challenging, but that might be the point. So it just makes it less of a nuisance, but still not convenient. The boss fights are good. I personally don't like how they literally repeated the first two boss fights later in the game though. But I guess that's the only thing I would really say I dislike about the game. Well, I wouldn't really say dislike, more it mildly annoys me. I think the first boss fight with Mistral does a good job at teaching you how to understand the boss fights in general without being overwhelming. In fact, I would argue that the boss fight is even kind of easy because I beat it first try. The monsoon fight took me 2 tries to beat, but I wouldn't call it easy. And Sundowner and Dreadstream Sam took me about an hour each to defeat. But at least for the Sundowner fight, it was because I didn't know I could parry as many attacks as I could. I'm personally not a big fan of how you have to defeat replicas of Mistral and Monsoon before you fight Sundowner, but it only took like 30 minutes total, even though you had to do the replicant Mistral fight again, even if you got to replicant Monsoon. The Armstrong fight was good. It didn't take me too long to do the mech fight, and it took me about 15 minutes to defeat his final phase. Monsoon really taught me the importance of parrying, and if I hadn't struggled so much with the Blade Wolf fight, I probably would have taken longer to defeat him. I died a couple more times in the second Monsoon fight, but that was partially because I fought the second Mistral first, and she usually took one of my health packs. For Sundowner, I struggled to break his shield until I didn't, and for Sam, I struggled to parry him until I didn't. I just slowly got better at doing what I needed to do until I won the fight. Sundowner's fighting style shows how much of a child he really is. He's scared and does whatever he can to not fight face to face, but Sam has a sense of honor, so he does everything he can to make it a fair fight with Raiden. And Senator Armstrong is almost the embodiment of all the fights before. You have to parry and aim your slices. That's why Armstrong's fight is probably the best. The game has excellent pacing, and it honestly might be the best difficulty curve I've experienced in the game, but I'm not keeping track. The only parts of the gameplay that weren't the best, although I'm glad is still there, is the stealth. I can count the times I actually completed an area because of stealth on my hand. I can honestly only think of 3 off the top of my head, not including other times I started stealthing but just got caught. I do think that I had a better time completing levels because I didn't have to fight as many enemies or just pass the room entirely, although it is probably the weakest area of the game. It is only really mandatory in the Blade Wolf DLC, but I'll talk more about that in the DLC section of the video. Now, although I love this game with a passion, I can't help but be a bit soured with the lacklusterness of the I know this is an old game and that consoles are a priority, but come on, you couldn't just allow native 1440p and 4K support, and the fact that they didn't allow ultra-wide support is a little frustrating as well, but at least more understandable. Now, I know there is a mod to allow 1440p support, but the developers should have done that by now. Now, is it the end of the world that I had to download a mod to play in 1440p? No, but it sure is inconvenient. Originally, I thought that, like the mod said might happen, my left joystick for QTEs wasn't working, but it does in fact seem to work. Either it wasn't working at first, but turning the mod on and off again fixed it. I don't know how that would work because I don't think the mod's code fundamentally changes as a result of me restarting it. I was also easily able to activate QTEs that had 2 inputs, including the left joystick, easily. So that's another reason I don't think that was the case. The second scenario is that it's just harder to activate. At first, I couldn't get the QTEs on the left joystick to work until I turned off the mod, but since I had to really jam it when the mod was off anyway, I also don't think that was the case. The last scenario, which I think is the most likely, is that I just wasn't spamming the left joystick inputs fast enough. I didn't notice it worked until the Colorado level. Before that, I thought that it just didn't feel as responsive, but it definitely works now, and I think you should use the mod if you're trying to run at a resolution higher than 1080p. Link in the description. Although there are visual glitches in the HUD, it doesn't interfere with the gameplay. There also isn't support for higher FPS than 60, but I think it might interfere with the game's physics and stuff like that, like a lot of games made around that time. I'm also slightly disappointed that they don't have native PlayStation controller support, but most PC games don't, and it's mainly on newer games anyway, so I won't really count that against them. And I know you can technically install a mod for that too, but it's more in depth than the resolution one, and I'm used to playing with Xbox controller inputs anyway, so I just played like that. I've also heard that keyboard and mouse inputs are horrendous, so I would recommend not doing that. Although for most third-person games that aren't more than 70% shooting, I use a controller anyway. So I guess they could have done that better too, even if controller would still probably be the best way to play. There's also a bug where when recording with GeForce Experience, which I use to record my videos, if you exit out to the home screen at any point during the recording of the game, all the recording will be a still of the first frame, which caused me to have to replay the Colorado level. One thing I really like about the PC port is that it contained all of the in the PC port, all of the DLC is included, besides the Solid Snake sword, but that was literally just in Japan. This includes extra costumes, weapons, and of course the story DLCs. By story DLCs, I mean the Sam and Blade Wolf stories. I played Jetstream Sam's campaign first. I completed it on July 31st, 2022, after struggling with the boss fight for a few days. I even started and completed the Blade Wolf DLC that day right after I finished Sam's. Both of the DLCs are fairly short, maybe the length of one long mission of the main campaign each. Both take place before the events of the main game, but Blade Wolf's has a flash forward at the end of his. Sam's DLC is action-based. In fact, there isn't even a stealth kill option in his technicians. His moveset is similar, but different to Raiden's. He has charged attacks, which basically means he can charge an attack and hit his enemies for significantly more damage than he otherwise could have. It's also less automated than Raiden. You have to manually jump while you just have to hold the run key with Raiden. He can double jump though. Sam has 3 boss fights. The first fight is with Blade Wolf. Although it didn't take me nearly as long as it did with Raiden, it was harder. He is a lot more aggressive in this fight. Secondly is Metal Gear Ray. It's honestly pretty easy. It's probably harder than it was with Raiden, but I would argue that it's easier than the Blade Wolf fight. The third and final boss is Senator Armstrong, and it honestly took me like an hour to beat. The first time I tried to fight him, I got him to 8%, and I couldn't get him any lower until my final attempt. In fact, I just hoped for the best once I got him to 12% in my final attempt. It took me like half a week of trying the fight every other day, but I'm glad I finally finished it. And although it isn't as good as the main game, I would say it's worth your time. It is probably a fair bit more difficult than the base game though, so keep that in mind. Now the Blade Wolf DLC is arguably easier than the main game, but that's because I stealthed most of it. Although the stealth isn't the most thorough in the game, I don't think it's bad. I found the stealth was easier for Blade Wolf than fighting, but that's kind of the point. I think it was shorter than Sam's DLC, but that might just be because the Senator Armstrong fight took me over an hour to complete. I do think that Sam was easier to fight with than Blade Wolf, but I like that you could actually do stealth with him. The first and only boss fight with Blade Wolf actually incorporates the stealth. At first I didn't know that you could parry specific attack, but once I realized you could, I completed the fight at that attempt. I'm not the biggest fan about how you have to play VR missions to collect them in both DLCs. I like the Mario-inspired ones of each though. I thought it was a good change of pace, and I found the Blade Wolf DLCs a lot easier than Sam's. I only completed 2 of Sam's, but I did all of the ones I saw for Blade Wolf's, although I probably prefer Sam's DLCs. I like Blade Wolf's ones too. And of course, who can forget the
memories broken, the truth goes unspoken. I'm vivid, forgotten my name. I don't know the season or what is the reason. I'm standing here holding my blade. A desolate place without any trace. It's only the cold wind of fear. It's me that I spy as I stand up and fight. The only thing I know for real, there will be.
What would the legacy of Metal Gear Rising be without the
memes? That's right, Jack. Better buckle up, because I'm about to send you to the back rooms.
What the hell are you talking about?
You're a normie, Raiden. You wouldn't understand my Reddit post. Goodbye. Raiden! Took you long enough. I've been waiting in the middle of this road for weeks.
I was in the back room.
Sounds like you've got a bit of a skill issue. But anyways, enough talk. Let's dance.
Looking good.
Get it, Sam!
Not as well known, that's apparent. In fact, I probably wouldn't have even known about this game if the memes hadn't shown me its utter beauty. In fact, I don't even think I can do this topic justice, so I will let Monkey Wrench, link in the description, talk about this topic further.
As you internet enthusiasts can see, memes are quite a big part of the game and its community. They've invited me and many other people to experience the greatness Metal Gear Rising has to offer. The game has spawned so many great memes, such as and memes, and my personal favorite, Jetstream Sam. Even though this game was made years ago, some memes still stand strong, showing how much the community cares about the game. I think the memes also enhance the experience, knowing that as I'm punching the hell out of an American politician, people are clipping that and making it funny. Overall, this game wouldn't be anywhere near as popular as it is now without the memes.
And second only to the memes, I would argue, is the music of this game is just as important as the way the music seamlessly goes from instrumental to vocal is arguably impressive for a game of this caliber. And arguably the music is even a significant part of the this is honestly good music too. Good enough to put in your personal playlist. Monkey Rich can attest to that. It's a simple and non-intrusive way of telling the backstories of the bosses without bogging you down with exposition. And the transitions, oh, you honestly have to play the game for yourself. But most of the fights, excluding the Sam fight, which I would argue makes it better because of how different it is, you have an instrumental track until the final phase of the boss fight when you get the vocal tracks. And they're honestly good. If you're someone who doesn't necessarily always get new games but really likes music, you should at least consider buying this game when it goes on sale, especially since it costs less than some fast food meals. In conclusion, buy Metal Gear Rising, especially if it goes on sale. I literally waited over 2 months to get this game just so I could buy it on sale. It's honestly worth $30, but if you are patient, you can get the game for $7.50. That is less than a rate of $1 per hour of gameplay, especially if you play it multiple times, which I'd argue it definitely has replay value. If I had to put an arbitrary rating on this game, it would be an 8 out of 10. It might have been a 9 if certain things were made with more care, like the PC port, making pairing more obvious, making localization more accurate, having slightly less cheesy performances, having the game be slightly longer, and even the fact that they didn't have Snake's sword that's in the Japanese version. But even though I may have my minor gripes with the game, this game will always be worth it, even if it's just for them. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I think this is the most effort I put into one of these videos yet. I hope it's at least somewhat on par with what the big YouTubers are doing, but let me know in the comments what I can improve on. If you like this sort of content, like the video so I know to make more of these. Have a great day, and see you next time.